1. Creation wins. Legendary questions. What do Facebook, Google, Salesforce.com, Uber, VMware, Netflix, IKEA, Bird's Eye, 5 Hour Energy, and Pixar have in common? In what way does Apple work like 165-year-old glass company? Corning. What all too common mistake did Microsoft make, and repeat over and over, when it wasted billions of dollars on Zune, Windows Mobile, Bing, and Microsoft stores? How do you explain why some startups last and build value while others shoot up and then flame out? Why was Elvis not just the king, but a category king? And what can all of this teach us about enduring success in the 21st century economy, in both good times and downturns? The key to each has to do with creating, developing, and dominating new categories of products and services. Stick around and we'll tell you how that's done. True stories of kings and kingdoms. Category kings are all around us. They create entirely new categories of business, or entirely new ways of doing things. For this book, we studied category kings, analyzed data about them, and interviewed founders of many. These are the companies that shape our lives and alter the future. As we like to say, they play bigger than other companies. Category kings are not a recent phenomenon. Before the 1920s, there existed no such category as frozen foods. Clarence Birdseye, yep, that was actually his name, created it. Like many category creators through the ages, Birdseye was an outsider. Born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1886, he spent a lot of time on his family's farm on Long Island and developed a passion for taxidermy, not a hobby many kids have these days. That led him to a job as a naturalist for the U.S. government, which eventually took him to Labrador, in Canada's northeastern corner. Birdseye watched the Inuit people catch fish and toss them on the ice, where the fish flash froze, retaining their flavor and texture. When Birdseye returned to the United States, he experimented by flash freezing fish between cakes of dry ice, and then realized the process also worked for vegetables. He started a company, at first called General Seafoods, to make and sell this new category of product. As he built his company, Birdseye realized he had to design and build the category itself, because before Birdseye, there was no ecosystem that would get frozen food from a factory to consumers, and no demand for frozen food because consumers didn't even know they might want it. He developed freezer cars for railroads and sold rail operators on the idea. He developed freezer cases for grocers and convinced them that frozen food would increase sales. He even convinced DuPont to invent cellophane. And he ran ads that positioned frozen vegetables as something different from canned vegetables. One early Life magazine ad, by then under the Bird's Eye brand, showed a woman in pearls lounging on a pillow eating Bird's Eye spinach, implying that only commoners put up with canned spinach. Frozen food was not just better than canned food, it was different from canned food. Birdseye's work took a couple of decades to pay off, but it takes time to build and dominate categories, and it took a lot more time then than it does now. Of course, almost a century later, Birdseye is still a huge brand in frozen foods. Clarence Birdseye has more in common than you might think with the founders of Uber. Uber is a category king of recent vintage. Not very long ago, we all lived with an age-old problem. In most cities, taxi service sucked. If you walked out to a given street corner, you had no idea if a taxi might happen by in a few minutes or, well, never. Yet there didn't seem to be an alternative way to get an instant car ride, so people didn't seek one out. We had an old, ongoing problem, but we didn't really know it was a problem that could be solved in a new way. On a snowy night in Paris in 2008, Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp, in the city for a European tech conference, stood roadside getting wetter and colder as they tried in vain to hail a cab. Kalanick and Camp were, separately, already reasonably successful tech entrepreneurs. Kalanick had started an online content delivery company, Red Swoosh, which got bought by Akamai Technologies for $20 million. Camp had done better, founding StumbleUpon, a content discovery site, and selling it to eBay for $75 million. They were looking for a next idea for a company, perhaps something they'd do together, and while freezing and frustrated in Paris, they talked of solving this taxi problem. Apple's iPhone had been introduced less than a year earlier, changing the way we think about mobile technology and services. Why, Kalanick and Camp wondered, couldn't you pull out your smartphone, push a button, and get picked up by a car? Back home in San Francisco, the pair experienced the problem anew. Hailing a cab in that town was like trying to get a bartender's attention in a jam-packed nightclub. So Kalanick and Camp went to work on their idea and launched their service in the summer of 2010 in San Francisco. As millions of users now know, a customer's iPhone app would, at the push of a button, send a dispatch to drivers, showing the customer's location. Drivers, not taxis, but moonlighters driving their own cars, would have their own version of the app on a phone, allowing them to see dispatches and respond. The system would store customers' credit card information, so paying for the ride could be easy and safe for everyone involved. Kalanick and Camp originally called this service Uber Cab, and later dropped the second part. Half a year later, investors were lining up to give Uber money. Benchmark Capital put in $10 million. Some famous names such as Jay-Z and Jeff Bezos invested. Uber expanded to other cities. As it grew, Uber at the same time did something extremely important. Uber made all of us aware that we had a taxi problem, and that the problem had a new solution. Uber did this through the way it designed the company and its service. It did this through its messaging to the public. And it did this through confrontation. Every time the taxi industry tried to stop Uber, the scuffle made people more aware of Uber. In London, taxi drivers protested Uber by going on strike. When riders couldn't get cabs, they signed up for Uber at a rate 8 times higher than before the strike. As Uber was developing its service and its company, it was defining this new category of problem and inserting it into our brains. Within a couple of years, Kalanick, by then Uber's CEO and public face, understood that he could frame an even larger problem that Uber could solve. All of personal transportation was too expensive and too messy, particularly in cities. Plus, too many cars lead to traffic jams and pollution. Those were big problems that never had a good solution. But what if? Kalanick asked all of us, fewer cars could serve more people? What if his service could get so big, reliable, and cheap that in many places using Uber could become more desirable than owning a car? He wanted to make transportation that's as reliable as running water, he told interviewers. And, by the way, that transportation wouldn't only move people around town, it could move anything. It could deliver stuff. Uber was designing its service and its company and, at the same time, a bigger category the company could define and ultimately dominate. 3. By 2014, Uber was getting what seemed like preposterous valuations from investors. In June 2014 it was valued at $17 billion. By December the number hit $40 billion. 6 months later it topped $50 billion. If you looked at Uber's business at the time, you would have concluded that its investors were out of their minds. But if you looked at the enormity of the problem, Uber had teed itself up to solve. 40 billion or 50 billion seemed cheap in the long run. Uber was creating a category of business that never before existed, and the company put it into our minds that it uniquely understood the problem and could craft a solution. Where a half-dozen years before there had been nothing, Uber was creating a whopper of a category, and making itself king. That's what investors were paying for, the potential of this new category and the belief that Uber would reign as its king for a long time. In 2015, Uber was still private. A sign that despite all its notoriety, Uber at 5 years old was still developing its category. Our data research shows that smart companies typically go public about the time their category takes wing, usually 6 to 10 years after the company's founding. In the 21st century, new category kings are being founded all the time, and at a faster rate than ever. A company called Sensity Systems is but one example. It started on a category creation path after serial entrepreneur Hugh Martin took over what was then a tiny company making LED lights. Martin was an outsider to the lighting industry. He'd previously run a biotech company, a telecommunications company, and a video game company, but never a lighting company. He saw an interesting opportunity in LED lights. LEDs run on the same voltage, 5 volts, DC, as computers, networking equipment, and digital sensors. That means that LEDs can essentially digitize light fixtures, changing the lighting industry just as much as music and photography were changed by becoming digital. In fact, lights can be embedded with sensors that pull in information about air quality, motion, sound, or weather. And since the lights can communicate over wireless networks, the LEDs can be networked together to share information or collect massive amounts of data. Lighting networks would then be able to track the number of cars in a mall parking lot, or, for police, light networks could detect gunshots with far better accuracy than current technology. Down the road, Martin could envision a globally connected light platform. We had the pleasure of working with Martin on defining and planning out the category he envisioned. A process we call category design. Martin and this team settled on a name for the category, Light Sensory Network, or LSN. Martin started evangelizing the category at the same time as he was building his company. He wanted potential customers to first understand the problems a light sensory network could solve. And if they wanted the problem solved, who were they going to call? Of course, the company that defined and made itself synonymous with category, Sensity. Without this kind of thinking, Sensity would have been just another undifferentiated smart lighting company. But it became the leading light sensory network company. Huge global companies entered the business of LED lights and sensors: General Electric, Philips, Samsung, LG. But Sensity, which by 2015 had signed up GE and Cisco as partners, wasn't trying to beat them by making better sensor-loaded LEDs. It planned to win by marketing something different, focused on the network and data. If Sensity executes well, it will reign as an enduring category king of light sensory networks. Again, this will take time, probably a decade. There's no guarantee the strategy will work. A lot of factors will come into play, many that Martin or Sensity can't control. But still, the chances of Sensity winning are much greater because it is doing the groundwork to design and develop its category. Sensity improved the odds that it will play bigger. Category kings defined. The most exciting companies create. They give us new ways of living, thinking, or doing business, many times solving a problem we didn't know we had, or a problem we didn't pay attention to because we never thought there was another way. Before Uber, we hailed a cab by standing perilously close to traffic with an arm in the air. After Uber, that just seemed dumb. These companies don't only invent something to sell us. They are not making products or services that just incrementally improve on whatever came before. They don't sell us better. The most exciting companies sell us different. They introduce the world to a new category of product or service. Like Clarence Birdseye's frozen food, or Uber's on-demand transportation. They replace our current point of view on the world with a new point of view. They make what came before seem outdated, clunky, inefficient, costly, or painful. We hear a lot about disruption. It's a holy word in the tech industry. Like maybe you should genuflect when someone says it. But disruption is a byproduct, not a goal. Legendary companies create new categories that generate a gravitational pull on the market. Customers rush to a new category because it makes sense to them. In some cases, people leave an old category behind, and their departure sucks the life out of it. In that way, sure, new categories disrupt old categories. But for the smartest pirates, dreamers, and innovators on the planet, disruption is never the goal. Creation is the goal. Elvis Presley didn't set out to disrupt jazz. He set out to create rock and roll, a product that came from his soul. Rock was different, not better, than jazz. But over time, as young audiences embraced rock, they left big band jazz and crooners behind. The byproduct of Elvis's creation was disruption. Sometimes, booming new categories don't disrupt anything at all. Airbnb created a new category of on-demand places to stay, but as of this writing, no one, including and especially co-founder and CEO Brian Chesky, is predicting the new category will lead to the collapse of the hotel industry. Our term for the companies that create, develop, and dominate new categories is category kings. Importantly, category kings are not necessarily the companies that first hatch an idea or patent an invention. A single cool product launched into the universe doesn't make a category king. Category kings take it upon themselves to design a great product, a great company, and a great category at the same time. A category king willfully defines and develops its category, setting itself up as the company that dominates that category for a long time. From time to time, the technology industry gets caught up in hype about soaring valuations of startups. But like disruption, valuations are an outcome, not a strategy. $1 billion valuation of a company that is not a category king is likely to be fleeting. $1 billion valuation of a category king that is creating, developing, and dominating a new category is often a bargain, in good economies or bad. Category kings are the explosive and enduring companies that create great value over time. Amazon.com, Salesforce.com, Facebook, Google. They do this by opening up a category with vast potential. We use the term category potential, and set themselves up to take most of the economics of the whole category. Category kings, the data show, usually eat up 70% to 80% of the category's profits and market value. Our data science analysis of U.S. venture capital-backed tech startups founded from 2000 to 2015 shows that category kings earned 76% of the market capitalization of their entire market categories. Category kings become some of the most famous brands because they become the symbol of the whole category: Xerox, Google, IKEA. The category king literally owns the problem it is solving. And for that reason, a category king is almost impossible to dislodge from its position in the category. Customers are too wedded to it. That's why Microsoft spent $10 billion on Bing yet never Made a dent in Google's share of search. It's almost always futile to try to unseat a category king that's not screwing up. This book is about the strategy that builds category kings. Following. This strategy doesn't make it certain you'll become a category king, but it will improve your odds. And we believe it will at least help you play bigger than you otherwise might. As we'll show, a category king strategy is important and effective when the economy is roaring and perhaps even more powerful when downturns cripple runner-up competitors. Some of the great category kings have been built during some of the worst times. Google in the early 2000s right after the dot-com crash, Airbnb in 2008 as financial markets melted. Bird's eye amid the Great Depression. Category kings are often the companies that get the most attention in the media and from investors and the public. Facebook defined and developed a new kind of social network that was based on your real life. We'll discuss later how that was different, not better, compared to social networks before it. Netflix started by creating the category of DVDs by mail, different from Blockbuster, and later created the category of streaming movies. Pixar designed the category of computer-generated movies. Airbnb, Tesla, Snapchat, and Twitter are recent category kings in consumer-facing markets. The enterprise technology space is full of category kings, too. Salesforce.com developed the cloud-based sales automation category. VMware defined and dominated a category of computer virtualization. Workday, Zenefits, NetSuite, and Slack are among the new category kings of business services. Most category kings are once in a founder's lifetime achievements. A rare few individuals have proven to be master category king creators. 1. Of the best of all time, as you might imagine, was Steve Jobs, especially during his second go-round at Apple. He led the creation of three important new categories: digital music, with the iPod and iTunes, smartphones, iPhone, and tablets, iPad. Elon Musk made Tesla Motors into the category king of electric cars and SpaceX into the category king of private spaceflight, incredibly doing that for both companies at the same time. Jeff Bezos started out making Amazon.com the category king of online retail, and repeated that success with e-book readers, Kindle, and cloud-based computing services, Amazon Web Services. A lesser-known but no less prolific creator of category kings is Seattle entrepreneur Rich Barton. He had a hand in founding Expedia, Zillow, and Glassdoor. As noted with Bird's Eye, category kings aren't just a connected age technology phenomenon. When Chrysler introduced the minivan in 1983, it created, and then dominated for 3 decades, a new category of personal vehicle. Bob Pittman's MTV and Ted Turner's CNN were once category kings. Boeing created the category of jet airliner with its 707 in 1958. Sometimes category kings aren't even a business, yet they define and develop something new in our way of life. Peter Drucker was the category king of management thinking. And of course, as we've mentioned, there was Elvis Presley, the category king of rock and roll. Those individuals were not just better than what came before, they were very different from what came before. Finally, category kings don't only come from Silicon Valley, or the United States. Global category kings have been born in all corners of the planet. IKEA created a new category of cheap, stylish, do-it-yourself furniture out of the tiny town of Älmhult in Sweden, and there's nothing else like it. Estonia gave birth to Skype, which developed the category of internet phone calls. Australia has given us Atlassian, the category king of collaborative technology for teams that build software. In some businesses, Cultural differences or national borders provide an opportunity to create a geography-defined category king. Alibaba built a gigantic category-dominating company by defining itself, essentially, as the Amazon.com of China. Flipkart did the same in India. Neither defined and developed the online retailing category, but they defined and developed online retailing in a different way to address and dominate a vast home market. For this book, we researched the category kings we just mentioned, and many more, and we'll discuss them in detail in later chapters. Category king economics. The economic advantages gained by a category king are staggering, and the trajectory is steeper and faster than ever. The reason has little to do with investor speculation that might prove fickle. It has everything to do with powerful technology trends that are only gaining momentum. The trends are changing the way the most astute venture capitalists invest, which in turn has shaped how entrepreneurs think about the companies they start. Category king economics are influencing CEOs as they consider new offerings and future directions, and affecting the way marketers position and engineers build products. Anybody planning a career needs to be aware of category king economics. In his 2014 book, 0 to 1, super investor Peter Thiel unequivocally celebrated monopolies, and made it clear that those are the companies he wants to invest in. Every monopoly is unique, but they usually share some combination of the following characteristics: proprietary technology, network effects, economies of scale, and branding. As you'll see, he's describing category kings, the companies that take all the economics out of a category. Thiel goes on to say, all happy companies are different, each one earns a monopoly by solving a unique problem. All failed companies are the same, they failed to escape competition. By Thiel's definition, category kings are the happy companies. For years, Mike Maples, one of Silicon Valley's legendary investors, has talked about seeking to put his money into thunder lizards. That's his term for category kings. A thunder lizard is a game-changing company that will massively outperform the rest of the industry, he tells the class that he teaches at Stanford University. Thunder lizards are rare. If in a given year there are 10,000 startups that get funded by angels and 1,500 get a Series A funding, then 80 companies will likely do well, but only 12 will be a thunder lizard. In Silicon Valley, we've watched venture capitalists, VCs, increasingly adopt a category king investment philosophy. Paul Martino of Bullpen Capital notes that VCs used to have a "me too" strategy. If a startup hit it big and opened up a hot new category, the many VC firms in Silicon Valley assumed that there was room for a lot of winners in that category. So every firm would invest in some company, any company, in the emerging category. But in this century, that phrase, "room for a lot of winners in that market," needs to be banished to the home for the criminally insane. As Martino tells us, it's now apparent that one company wins big and dominates a healthy category, and the rest struggle, get acquired or perish. That means that as soon as one company appears to be the category king, the smart money competes to invest in that company, bidding up its value. That realization among investors is a reason valuations of new category kings spiked so drastically in the 2010s. On the flip side, while Me Too companies can get funding early on, they quickly find they have trouble getting new rounds from high-quality investors who understand category king economics. A lot of the Me Too's are a lost cause waiting to happen. 9. Brian Roberts at Venrock, another top-tier VC, tries to spot potential category kings early. A category king tends to have broken open a new space, and that often means a big risk element early on, something most People think you can't surmount, or that if you do surmount, no one will care, he told us. A company like Snapchat might fall into that latter category. Early on, a lot of people wondered why anyone except teenagers would care about a service that disappears their selfies. But once a category king proves its category works, as Snapchat did, things go from non-consensus to consensus very quickly, but by then you, the company, have some competitive advantage that's hard to surmount. In Roberts's view, category kings win big, and these days, they win fast. Meanwhile, Jim Getz of Sequoia Capital directly advertises his category creation philosophy: we seek mission-driven founders who can build a great company and category at the same time. Various studies point to the power of category kings. Eddie Yoon, a principal at the Cambridge Group, in 2011 published a piece in Harvard Business Review titled "Category Creation is the Ultimate Growth Strategy." His firm had run an analysis of the top 20 companies on Fortune's 2010 list of fastest-growing companies. Those 20 companies received an average of 3.40 in incremental market capitalization for every dollar of revenue growth. But half of those top 20 were category creators, Yoon determined, and those 10 companies got 5.60 in incremental market cap for every dollar of revenue growth. Wall Street exponentially rewards the category creation companies, Yoon wrote. In 2014, consulting giant McKinsey published an article titled "Grow Fast or Die Slow." McKinsey analyzed 3,000 software and online companies from 1980 to 2012. It identified a small slice of remarkable companies as supergrowers, which pretty much overlaps with our definition of category kings, and proclaimed that wildly fast out of the starting gate growth predicts long-term success. Category kings, once established, are almost impossible to displace. Why is this happening with so much velocity now, especially since category kings have always been a part of the business landscape? The ubiquity of networks, cheap cloud-based distribution, and lightning-fast word-of-mouth through social media is intensifying a winner-take-all economy, especially when we're talking about digital products and services. Keep in mind that in 1999, about 400 million people were connected to the Internet. By 2015 that number had rocketed to 3 billion, on its way to 4 billion by 2020. And by 2020 the planet is expected to have 6 billion smartphones in use. At the same time, tens of billions of things like cars, lights, industrial sensors, thermostats, and dog collars are getting connected to networks, while industries that were never digital, taxis, hotels, medicine, are quickly becoming digital. This Internet of Things will make almost everything part of the global network. Since networks give everyone from any place access to the perceived best in any category, the vast majority choose the leader and leave the second or third best behind. It's the dark side of the long tail concept pundits have been talking about for more than a decade. In any category of product or service, one entity gets to be the big and valuable dog, while all the rest wind up in the economically challenging tail. The category king dogs unequivocally wag the second-tier tails. Once a company wins a position as category king, a flywheel of benefits opens a gap between the leader and the rest. The leader, for example, increasingly has the best data. In today's world, data is power. All those transactions on Amazon give the company valuable insights about its customers, inventory, prices, everything. Same with every ride through Uber, every movie chosen on Netflix, every entry on Salesforce.com. As the leader amasses data, the data becomes an unfair advantage, a gap that the followers can't hope to close. Also, the best employees want to work for the category king. The best partners want to sign deals with the category king. Outside developers want to develop for the category king. The best investors want to put in their money, and the best investment bankers want to work on the IPO. As a category king pulls far ahead economically, it has the wherewithal to make acquisitions that vault it even further into the lead. The economic power of a category king just builds and builds. In late 2014, one tech industry analyst, Michael Walkley of Canaccord Genuity, looked at the state of profits of smartphone companies and found that Apple took in 93% of the industry's total profits. Imagine that. Of all the world's smartphone makers, one company, the category king, claimed almost all of the economics. Like it or not, there is increasingly no middle class in business. The wealth goes to the kings. A second place prince, such as Lyft or Samsung, can get a tidy share of the economics. The rest of the players get relegated to the life of serfs in the category kings empire. In the mid-2010s, the media became obsessed with fast-rising valuations of tech startups. Some of the numbers might have been driven by financial market conditions, which of course can change with the wind. But the big picture, the exuberance has been driven by foundational changes in technology and the economy, and exacerbated by category king economics. If you look closely, you'll see that the highest valuation startups are almost always established or emerging category kings. Through data, we captured a moment in time that shows the velocity of growth and the yawning gap between kings and the rest. We analyzed valuation data on thousands of tech startups, and found that winning companies born between 2009 and 2014 got to super high valuations 3 times faster than companies started in the early 2000s. In other words, in just over a decade, the growth rate of the value of high-growth tech startups nearly tripled. But unlike in the tech boom of the late 1990s, that rising tide was floating the yachts while sinking the dinghies. 13A categories non-kings struggled. Our data science research found that a 6-year-old startup that wasn't yet a king had almost zero chance of becoming one. Here's the category king gap in a nutshell. Uber was valued at $51 billion in late 2015, while at about the same time the number 2 in that space, Lyft, was valued about 25 times lower, at $2 billion. The rest of that category was barely noticeable. Perhaps the actual values were unsustainably high, perhaps not. But our attention is on the relative value. On Uber being worth 25 times more than Lyft. Investors looked at the future value of the category of on-demand personal transportation and saw one company, the king, Uber, taking most of it. We started writing this book amid a frothy upcycle in the tech industry. We have no idea whether by the time you're reading this the tech boom will have tipped into a down cycle. But we're certain that the dynamics and strategies in this book are perpetual. In flush times, a company needs to think like a category king to outrun and outmaneuver all the other competitors that will get funded. In rough times, when money is tight, a king might be the only survivor in a given category. In general, a down cycle is a fantastic opportunity for a category king to dispense with all of its underfunded challengers and come out of the cycle more powerful than ever. In short, any time, up or down or middling, is a good time to get smarter instead of hoping to get luckier. And thinking like a category king is a smart way to improve your odds of success, instead of leaving it to chance. This is what we mean by playing bigger. Introducing category design. If you play poker, you know of Greg Raymer. He bounced around the Midwest while growing up, got a master's degree in biochemistry from the University of Minnesota, graduated from the University of Minnesota Law School in 1992, then worked as a patent attorney for Pfizer. He'd played lots of poker in college, we were all pretty pathetic, he recalls. And then, while working in Chicago, he decided it was time to learn to play well. He read poker books and started entering tournaments, perfecting his game as he played. In 2004, he won the World Series of Poker, a $5 million prize. At the World Series of Poker the following year, he did something unprecedented in a game that seems to involve so much luck. He followed up his first-place victory by finishing in the top tier again, taking home more than $300,000. By 2013 he'd made more than $7.4 million playing poker. And he quit his day job. We talked to Raymer about how someone can increase his or her odds in a game that has so many factors that can't be controlled. Seriously, we don't want to talk to technology people all the time. A lot of people don't think about luck and skill properly, he told us. Most people, he explained, think of luck and skill in any particular endeavor as a zero-sum continuum. A straight line that puts luck at one end and skill at the other. That would mean that if you'd say that an outcome is determined by 40% luck, it must be 60% skill. Or if it's 90% luck, then the outcome must rely on only 10% skill. But luck and skill, Raymer insisted, are not on the same axis. And that makes all the difference. Of course, Raymer used poker to illustrate. There is a great amount of luck involved in which cards you get. But there's also a great amount of skill in deciding what to do with those cards, the bets you place, the way you conduct yourself at the table. On the luck side, the odds for everyone around the table are the same. On any given hand, you might be terribly unlucky, and there would be nothing much you could do to win. But the most skillful players essentially better their odds over time. If the odds are the same for everyone, more skill results in better decisions with the cards you're dealt, and ultimately gives you a better chance of winning. You have to be realistic about how much luck is involved in whatever you're doing, and after that kind of ignore it, Raymer said. Then you have to say, what's the smartest decision I can make, and ignore results in the short run? Because they are irrelevant. Raymer's consistent success shows that good outcomes don't happen by accident, even in chaotic multidimensional games like poker or business. In business, the odds are stacked against any one company becoming a category king. A company can do everything right yet fall victim to outside forces it can't control. We learned this in the late 1990s before forming Play Bigger, sometimes painfully. Al carved out a brilliant new category of digital immersive sports at Quokka, but technology and broadband networks didn't catch up to his vision fast enough, and the company didn't survive. Christopher had a similar experience at Cient, helping to build a leader in e-commerce consulting that then fell victim to the impact of the dot-com crash on its clients. If it's become highly desirable for a company to become a category king. If we're in an era when the category king wins big and everyone else goes home, why wouldn't you do everything you can to boost your odds? If the odds are the same for every company, your company needs to make decisions and implement a strategy that gives it the best chance to beat the odds and beat competing companies. An occasional category king might be almost entirely the result of luck. But most category kings are not an accident. Many start out with a lucky break, addressing a seemingly small problem that later taps into big demand at exactly the right time. But those companies usually develop and dominate their new categories by making skillful decisions and executing on a purposeful plan. We see the emergence of a new discipline in business. We call the discipline category design. It is emerging today in much the way engineers Embraced product design in the 1980s to make sure individual products had the best chance of succeeding, of beating the odds. In the early 2000s, companies adopted experience design, a discipline a step up from product design, developed as a way to make sure the mix of hardware, software, and usability together gave the user the best experience possible. Experience design is yet another way to improve the odds of winning in a nutty marketplace. Category design involves creating a great product, along with its experience, a great company, and a great category at the same time. It is a broad, deep discipline that impacts every part of a company and its leadership team. We've practiced category design as executives at our own companies in the past, including Macromedia and Mercury Interactive. With help from our category thinking, Macromedia was sold for $3.5 billion and Mercury for $4.5 billion. We've also researched and analyzed the category king activity around us, particularly in Silicon Valley. More recently, as advisors and coaches, we've worked on category design with a diverse group of companies, in each case with the goal of increasing the chances that the company will have a significant and enduring impact. Our goal in this book is to give you tools to better your odds of getting to your own great outcome. Bad category design, a cautionary tale. We can also tell you what category design is not. For instance, it's not what Jawbone practiced impressively 3 times in its first 16 years of its existence. Jawbone came up with cool innovations that created a brand new product category. Not many startups ever do that. But 3 times, Jawbone failed to develop and dominate the category it created. Not many startups do that, either. Jawbone's story began like so many others in Silicon Valley, at Stanford University. A student, Alexander Asali, working on his senior thesis, drew up plans for a wrist-worn cell phone that wirelessly connected to a headset. That turned into a business plan for a company initially called Alifcom, later changed to Jawbone. While working on the wrist-worn product, which never got made, Alifcom developed headset technology that could be used to suppress background noise while clearly picking up the user's voice. That led to U.S. Defense Department contracts, a few product development missteps, and then, in 2007, a breakthrough device, a small headset that could wirelessly connect to a cell phone using Bluetooth and suppress surrounding noise. Called Jawbone, the product came along just as states were passing laws saying phone calls in cars had to be hands-free. The whole situation was just what category creation is all about. The Jawbone was an agenda-setting solution for a clear problem at the right time. The investment community knew it. As sales of Jawbone devices took flight, top-tier venture capitalists lined up to give the company money. An IPO seemed likely. But the company didn't cement the Jawbone devices' position. It didn't systematically develop the category of high-quality hands-free calling, didn't develop the public's demand for this solution, and didn't get overwhelming publicity and credit for creating the leading solution to the problem. As competitors came out with competing products, Jawbone seemed to the public like just another wireless headset. Put another way, if someone in 2009 decided she needed a wireless headset, the automatic thought probably wasn't that she needed a Jawbone headset. More likely, she'd have thought, I'll go to Best Buy and compare products and prices of wireless headsets and then decide which one to purchase. If consumers are doing that, the category has no king. In retrospect, Jawbone had the opportunity to develop a great product, great company, and great category at the same time, but didn't. It fell short on category design. Jawbone sales veered south by 2009, and a planned IPO was put on hold. So that was the company's first category whiff. But then in 2010, Jawbone, by then the name of the company itself, came out with a category-defining Bluetooth speaker, the Jambox. Fortune magazine even wrote that Jambox was creating an entirely new consumer category. And yet Jawbone again left category design on the table. Other companies, such as Bose and Logitech, soon matched the features and quality of the Jambox. And the market flooded with competing products. By 2015, the Jambox had only 5% of its category's market share. Finally, Jawbone seemed poised to invent the wearable fitness tracker category with a device called the Up3. This time, the product didn't get out in the planned time frame, and a startup company, Fitbit, barged in and stole the category. In 2015, Fitbit had become the king of wearable fitness trackers, and sopped up 68% of the category's market share in North America. The Fitbit brand became synonymous with the category in a way that the Jawbone headset, Jambox speaker, and Up3 tracker never did. The Jawbone company, inventive as it was, could have become an Amazon or Apple. But its performance failed to live up to its promise, and we believe that while the company got product innovation right, it fell down on category design. We can tell you some other things category design is not. It's not any of this first-mover advantage bullshit that has been a Silicon Valley calling card since the 1990s. Being first to invent something can be fantastically important, but it doesn't mean squat if you don't define and develop the category. Jawbone is one proof point, but we could cite hundreds. Apple didn't invent any of the product categories it came to dominate. Facebook wasn't the first social network. Tesla didn't make the first electric car. But they all made something different from what came before, and built a category that pulled in customers and made them desire the product. The first inventor is an innovator to be thanked. The first to define and develop a category is a category king to be followed. Category design is not just engineering. Too many people in Silicon Valley believe that building a great product is enough, and that the market will find it and flock to it. That's a disease that has infected even the best and brightest minds. In fact, the best product doesn't always win the category. Different wins. Great category thinking wins. Best product gets you an award at a TechCrunch conference. Category design is also not just marketing. Category design is a company-wide strategy. It involves the CEO and top management, product designers, engineers, sales, marketing, PR, partners, and often customers. And users, too. We've heard CEOs sing the refrain. We make shit and sell shit and everything else is bullshit. Well, good luck with that. While you're making shit and selling shit, someone else will define your category and steal it from you. Category design isn't just positioning or branding. We have great respect for the seminal 1970s book Positioning, by Al Ries and Jack Trout. Their sense of positioning as a necessary discipline was on the mark for the late 20th century. But in this century of mobile/social/cloud, dynamics have changed, and positioning is only one part of category design. And as for branding, we call branding agencies tattoo parlors. You don't want to wake up with Mike Tyson's tattoo on your face, so don't let someone else tattoo you. Brands don't make a category king. Category design does. Here's how we did this book. The three of us in Play Bigger came into this book project with our intimate experiences and gut feelings about category-based strategy. We had been at The top levels of companies, some of which became category kings for a period of time. We came together to advise companies about the ideas behind category design, and as we did, we learned more. To test our ideas, we started by crunching data so we could understand both the game and the timing of the game. We pulled in data on thousands of public and private technology companies started between 2000 and 2015, and sorted for valuation and market domination trends. This helped us identify companies that defined, developed, and then dominated a category of product or service that did not exist previously. In our reckoning, there were 35 giant category kings created from 2000 to 2015. Others have emerged since then. Once we had those 35, we researched them to look for patterns. In this way, we could check our beliefs against the characteristics and best practices of living, breathing category kings. As it started to become clear to us what made a king, we looked for other kings that wouldn't have shown up in our study, older companies like Bird's Eye, or emerging kings like Sensity, and added those to our bag of research. We also looked at companies that tried but failed to become category kings, or somehow lost their category crown. As common characteristics emerged, we sorted them into buckets and drew out principles. The buckets make up the chapters of the rest of this book.